Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number LB4310C-350-633. This is a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch single acting spring hinge, full mortise, contract grade, lube bearing, steel base, satin brass plated. That's a lot. Let's dissect the part number. First of all, LB stands for lube bearing, a concealed maintenance-free type of bearing construction proprietary to Bommer. 4310 is a reference to the 4310C really is a reference to the hinge templating itself. That means that it is a square-cornered hinge and a template pattern for the screw holes. The C refers to the contract grade thickness of the leaf, meaning that this is the thicker of the two leaves that you'd have on a 3.5 inch hinge. 350 is a reference to the size of the hinge. It's 3.5 inches tall and 3.5 inches wide. The height is the first dimension on a hinge like this. Doesn't really matter as much because it's 3.5 by 3.5, but if it was 5 by 4.5 or 4.5 by 4, more likely to be 4.5 by 4, of course. It'd be 4.5 by 4. Keep that in mind. 633 means two things. First of all, it means it's a steel base hinge made of steel, and that on that steel is a satin brass plating. This is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're intended to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. And you can just see the thickness of the leaves there, that this is not a standard residential thickness hinge. So keep in mind that the leaf thickness on this hinge is 130 thousandths thick, 0.130, so just heavier than an eighth, versus a standard residential hinge that's about 96 thousandths, something in that range. So if your existing hinges are 1/8 of an inch or in slightly larger, then you know you've got the contractor, the C quality thickness leaf. If it's less than 1/8 of an inch, and noticeably so, then you have the residential thickness. This is single acting. It will close the door in only one direction. It's non-handed, can be used on left hand or right hand doors. Okay. UL listed for fire door applications. There is a link below this video to the template, and that template shows everything else important dimensionally about the hinge that I've not already covered. And specifically what you'll see are the locations of the screw holes, and you'll certainly want to refer to that template to be sure that if you're replacing an existing hinge, that this will work for you. And a 3.5 inch hinge is typical for 1 3/8 doors. You can see it on a thicker door, but 1 3/8 is what this would really be made for. And an application common for this would be an 1 3/8 solid core door that you'll see on a home with an attached garage. The door going to the garage could be 1 3/8, certainly it can. Less common for an exterior door, but not unheard of. And the owner simply wants that garage door to be self-closing. Makes sense. Perfect, typical application for that. You could, again, use it on a thicker door, but your back set would be significantly greater at that point. And for an 1 3/4 door, you'd be looking at a 4 by 4 or even a 4.5 by 4.5 inch hinge. But compare this against your existing to make sure that these locations line up with what you're doing. Okay. Now, it's a spring hinge, and that's really the meat and potatoes of this video. The anatomy of this hinge is such that there is a tension collar up at the top, and there's not one down below. Okay? When you're installing the hinge, install the hinge with the tension collar pointed towards the top. It will work for either hand door, and it is via that tension collar that you set the tension on the spring hinge. Now, before we talk about how to set the tension, they are assuming that you're dealing with doors no bigger than 3 foot by 7 foot. And they're assuming that your door range is between 70, well, it could be less, of course, but no greater than 90 pounds. That's crucial. I'm not a fan of spring hinges in the sense of comparing them to a door closer, like a hydraulic sort of control on the door, surface closer or even something concealed. Hydraulic control is the preferred way to control a door from closing, because a spring, all it does is winds up tension and release. Hydraulic control gives you actual control over the door. A spring hinge doesn't give you control over the door like a door closer will. However, there are applications where it's completely impractical to install a door closer for whatever reason. You may not have the physical dimensions required to install a door closer. You simply might not want to go through the effort of actually installing one, and it would be unusual or atypical to install a door closer on that same residential door. It's unusual to see those closers, what I'm trying to say, on that sort of door. And a spring hinge is going to fit that perfectly. Spring hinges would be typical also in a condo building on the unit doors themselves. Okay, that would be an appropriate application for that, whereas a door closer would be less common. But in the stairwells of the condo building, that's going to be door closers. That would be something you'd want hydraulic control over, so that the door doesn't simply close just with the release of tension. There are instructions below this video to the installation, okay, and also certifications and hinge selection guide. But the bottom line is this. How many spring hinges do you need? Well, Bommer says if you're dealing with a door up to about 70 pounds, 2 spring hinges. You get over that, or up to about 90 pounds, 3 spring hinges are what they're recommending. Now, I'm a fan of all spring hinges. It's not for the obvious reason. It is for the reason that, well, I have installed these, I have serviced these, I've replaced these, and I can tell you from actual experience that you have a better probability of success when you have more spring hinges sharing the work. If you're underpowered in the spring department, what you end up needing to do is to build up so much tension in the spring just to get the door from a dead stop, start moving to build enough inertia just to limp its way all the way closed. Sometimes the door will slam. Sometimes there's not enough stored energy in the spring or springs to get the job done. And I have simply found that with more spring hinges to share that work, you've got better success of a door actually getting closed. And if it's a fire-rated door, and it's unlikely that yours is, based on the size of this hinge, it's required that the door be self-closing. It has to be self-latching, and that's the door lock part, and it has to be self-closing. And if the door doesn't close, it's not a fire-rated door. It's part of it being a fire-rated door. So it could be a life safety issue as well. You've got to have the ability to get the door closed with the hardware that's on the door. Another application that you'll have is a hinge like this will be installed on the exterior entry door of a 3-flat building. Well, in the wintertime, all the windows and doors are closed up, and you can set the tension on the springs to get it to reliably close. Well, in the summertime, you might have the back door open or some windows open, and that air will just come through and race through. So you're going to back the tension off a little bit. When you've got more spring hinges on reserve, you've got more options in terms of getting the door to operate properly so that it closes without slamming. Because keep in mind that spring hinge has got to overcome all that air resistance, overcome the weight of the door from basically a dead stop, overcome the resistance of the latch bolt hitting the strike plate as well. You can mix this with a 3.5-inch regular commercial grade hinge. The axis of pivoting is compliant with that, so you won't have a problem. How to set the tension? Every order is going to come, or every order will come with a tension rod that's a black piece of steel, and a tension pin, which is a silver piece of steel that you see right there. Now this order happens to have 2 hinges on it, so the client's got 2 tension pins. Well, with that tension collar pointed towards the top, insert the tension rod into one of those holes and turn it clockwise. And as you do so, you reveal new additional holes, and it's into one of those new holes that you'll insert that tension pin. Up to 3 holes is what Bommer recommends for setting the tension. Go beyond that and you run the risk of contorting that spring, and of course it can break, and the hinges are irreparable at that point. Okay. Last thing the second to last thing is this hinge is available in several different architectural finishes: prime coat, black japanned, zinc, brass, chrome, bronze, both polished and satin, oil rubbed bronze as well. Specials, satin nickel, they'll do that as well. Bommer will. Then the last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo. Right above it says Made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. you have any questions on the Bommer, number LB4310C-350-633, single acting spring hinge, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.